Welcome to the Intelligence Amplifiers, podcast that celebrates the people who make the intelligence a collective superpower. In every episode, we uncover the stories of learning and development leaders who amplify knowledge, break down silos, and empower teams to thrive. These are the enablers of insight, the ones turning expertise into action and shaping the future of work by ensuring that the right knowledge reaches the right people at the right time. So, if you're ready to explore how the intelligence is amplified and shared across organizations, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Well, welcome to today's episode of Intelligence Amplifiers. Today we have Denisse Lopez joining us from Booking.com. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Marko. Excited to be here with you today.
Great to have you. And I know you've been at Booking for a while. You run global L&D. You focus on engineering, data, AI, ML, like all the cool stuff for like cutting edge, tech people. So we'll get to that. But before we do that, I wanted to start with your sort of like earlier career or even youth. It sounds like you got inspired to help others through your parents, right? They were teachers, I believe. Tell me a little bit about that. How was your childhood, or how did it inspire you?
Indeed. So I think my dad was always an early adopter in terms of technology. So I was quite early exposed to mobile phones, even like cool watches, computers, internet. So he was really into technical things. And I was also helping him, right? Like setting up networks, even assembling computers. So very technical background oriented to technology. And my mom, despite having other degrees, she chose teaching English as her passion, let's say. So I was always involved in as student volunteers or demoing classes, training teachers. So I think in a way, also those were my first jobs, right? Like teaching English for kids, then adults, but also helping setting up technical networks, printing systems, all of that. So I think that nice combination is what led me to enjoy what I do today.
Got it. And I remember at one point when we were chatting earlier, you said there's something about the commitment or mission to help others. Like that's kind of like a common thread, and then L&D is just sort of like a way to manifest that. What is it about helping others? Like how do you think about that? How do you think about that purpose, I guess?
Yeah, so it's very interesting, right? Because I've never thought about it. For me, speaking English was a given. But then when I thought what this skill would give people, it would mean they could study abroad, for example, or they could get a better job, or they could travel. So I didn't see it as much as how that is going to impact your life for a positive change, right? So to me, it was just like a given. It's something you have to do. There's no opt out, right? But I think the more I started being exposed to the HR world, and where coaching was also something I was exposed, teaching people how to learn other stuff, and even how can they really learn better. I think that's when I understood how learning and development and helping people learn actually transforms their life for good, right? And also when they are able to share knowledge with others, you're not losing anything, right? It's just a win-win for everyone. And I think that's more the mission that I felt more and more compelled to drive my career towards to, right? The improvement of the quality of your life based on the knowledge that you acquire throughout your life. So happier lives. I mean, you get to know yourself better, right? You understand what drives you, what fulfills you, and then just continue that path, right? And if you can also help others around your way, I think that's a win-win for everyone, right? So that's more or less the vision I somehow discovered through learning and development.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, for me personally as well, I started by working with a nonprofit that was helping bridge the digital divide. It was basically helping underprivileged inner city kids and so forth. And that's when I realized how much like teaching somebody something can transform their life. And so that's how I kind of I saw that in you, and I was like, huh, we kind of like fell into it in a similar way and it was about helping others, and kind of like really transform those trajectories. So super awesome. And speaking of traveling, I think you got to travel quite a bit, right? Like you I believe you're Mexican native, right? And then
Yeah,
California,
exactly.
and now Netherlands. So it's been a little bit of a journey, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I was lucky enough. I grew up in Mexico. I'm Mexican. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to study in the US. I ended up staying for a year. And that really opened my world to other nationalities because it was quite an international university, right? And that sparked the curiosity of, okay, let's see what's out there in Europe, right? I also wanted to learn French. It was like my dream, right? So
Uh-huh.
I lived in Brussels for a year, and then I met my husband, who is Dutch. So that led me to being moving to the Netherlands. So really embracing life through different cultures, and being here is also very nice. Yeah, it's just faster and easier to travel to other countries and immediately within 2, 3 hours be in a complete different surrounding, right? Whereas in Mexico, you can travel 10 hours and you're still in Mexico, right? So it's not that different, but here is such a joy, right, in Europe. So
It's
indeed, I've been a little bit everywhere.
I know it's quite different. Then in America, what 9 out of 10 Americans still don't have a passport, something like that.
Yes.
So it's very different. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us on this. So I believe you started your L&D career with Philips Lighting, right? And that was in the Netherlands.
Yes, in the Netherlands, here in Amsterdam.
Uh-huh.
So part of the big Royal Philips group decided to spin off all the lighting division. So when we moved, I was lucky enough to build the back then Philips Lighting University. So I learned a lot. We worked with a lot of consulting firms and we're also pouring a lot of expertise. So it was great, right? It was a really nice experience, really connected to the business, really to the switch of the strategy, what was going on in the industry at the time. So it was a very interesting exposure, right, of an L&D, but really much more oriented to the business and like really married to the strategy that we were trying to achieve. So it was an excellent way to start L&D officially, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that often comes up for me is like learning and development sometimes can be a nice to have, right? Companies have it just to kind of like check the box. But then on the other side, sometimes can be very, very strategic. And I remember like when you and I were talking, you basically said, well, Philips Lighting was in making light bulbs. And they sort of saw the writing on the wall, like you can't really survive just making light bulbs, right? A piece of hardware, and it was shifting entire strategy to become a high-tech company to make all the digital services and things that we now think about, like Philips Hue and all that. And so lots of software, very, very different company than it was. So huge, massive transformation, and L&D was the key to that strategy, right? So that's kind of going back to like L&D strategic versus a nice to have, right?
Yes, absolutely right. And it was very interesting piece of work that maybe in the moment I wasn't realizing how strategic this was,
Mhm.
but it was really well thought, really connected to business outcomes, right? Even not just doing learning for everyone, but even focusing on who's our target audience and why with a clear communication. So it
Mhm.
was really easy for people to understand why we were doing that, right? And what was the urgency? Like, why now? Right? Our industry indeed was transforming. People were ditching the traditional bulbs much more faster than what we had predicted. So that's why we now needed to help our staff to really focus on selling other types of services rather than a product, right? And then identify what else you need because you are now into a technology space that you may not been before. So how are we going to upskill you and even innovating back then into bringing different external providers, right? Realizing that we cannot do everything in house. So we need some help. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? There's so much content and providers out there, off the shelf content that could help us. So even that
Mhm.
journey, right? Plugging in different providers, curating programs with cooperation with our SMEs was really something that really helped us transition successfully and then continue the strategic position they had in the market, right, for this purpose.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, it's pretty for me, just mind blowing to think about going from selling light bulbs to helping people rethink their jobs, right? Like, and what goes into that transformation. That's super remarkable. So, yeah, thanks for like putting the context to that, because otherwise it can be just like, oh, Philips, the lighting company. So, but yeah, it's huge.
Exactly.
A big deal. That's super awesome. And then and then you went to booking.com. So what drew you to kind of go to different industry, different company?
Yeah, so I think by working at the Philips Lighting University, I was also supporting and understanding closely, right? I got to travel to Eindhoven, where the big R&D, research and development department was, and really attending a fair where honestly technology is our competitive advantage, right? The faster we innovate, the better products we can offer. So I think getting into that technology world was really satisfying. I got a bit of an entry point into what technology companies or innovation means in a digital era. So
Hmm.
I think it sparked some curiosity, and I think I just decided to explore a career in tech or give it a try and see what are the tech companies out there that would have a seat. And I was lucky to find booking.com. So I immediately took on the journey, and it was indeed exactly everything I was looking for. I was so happy to see, right? Like not just the technical company, but also the great culture of experimentation, of failing, right? Of truly learning, and also an amazing L&D team, right? Like really huge compared to what we have, but also really great atmosphere, right? And you could really see the learning culture really brought to life. So that's when I really like fulfill my dream, let's say, of check, check, check. It's all super cool.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm lucky enough to at Plus Plus, most of our customers are big tech companies, and they all value their people, and they'll invest in bettering their people, and so I get to see some really sort of advanced, um, focused on learning and so forth. But I think booking is the next level, right? Like in terms of maturity, right? Like in terms of how you go, how much you there's that promise of continuous learning and so forth. Can you like talk a little bit about that culture, what it feels like uh, from the learning perspective?
Yeah, so I think it's really unique in the sense that, well, the journey, right, from startup and then like building up, scaling, right, the pace, but also the eagerness for people to try new things and to experiment, to fail, but also sharing knowledge to help people don't fall into the same mistake, right? So a lot of collaborative effort, a lot of peer-to-peer initiatives, right? I think when I joined, I was surprised to just see the amount of colleagues that were actually trainers themselves, right? Without having to be super professional or like being scared out, like, hey, I've never facilitated a workshop, right? It's just like, I have the knowledge, there's a group of people, like, let's just see how it goes, right? And then iterate and iterate and iterate. So that was to me something that I really experienced as a true collaborative and like ideal environment to learn, right? It's inviting. It's really coming at the time where you need it the most from someone you trust, right? Very easily, very smooth because learning was happening everywhere, right? That was a bit of the problem. It was everywhere that we had to like more or less bring it together, structure it, and make sure people knew about these great programs going on, right? Um, but that was, I think, the spirit that it is still today. And it's a pleasure, right? Working with a lot of these great colleagues that we have and that they're super bright minds. So, I mean, it is my pleasure to team up with them and like just help them spread out more knowledge, right?
Yeah, there are a couple of things I wanted to kind of double click on that. You said learning is everywhere. So sometimes I see sort of like a centralized learning organization, right? Like HR owns L&D, and then it's like a dotted line to everyone. And it usually means HR does like manager training, kind of a new hire onboarding and that sort of thing. Um, but then engineering does their own thing and sales does their own thing and so on. And everyone's kind of like on their own thing and nobody's really talking. But I believe at Booking, you kind of have a little bit of a different model where L&D teams are sort of embedded in the specific domains. How are you guys organized in terms of learning teams, and how does that work?
Yeah, so we have a centralized learning team where indeed we have different center of expertise, right? Learning and development for leadership, for example. Um, we also have a pool of project managers that also handle some strategic programs or, yeah, that are reaching a wider audience, right? But we also have a team where I am lucky to be part of learning and development business partners, right? So each of us, we partner directly with specific business units just to also offer everything that we have centralized, but also understand what are your unique needs depending on your strategy or uh, business objectives that you have. And on top of that, Booking has something that we call crafts, which is really a group of experts in a field, right? This is really unique to tech companies, right? Um, just to make it easier for example, an engineering manager to be able to evaluate how the product person supporting him is performing, right? Or how is the UX designer really delivering his or her best work, right? So we have these crafts to help people really assess and calibrate the outcomes that they bring. So these crafts are really driving a lot of development as well. So part of our work as learning and development business partners is also to support these crafts. So if you take into these three angles of covering learning needs, we have really the strategic centralized programs for most of our audiences. Then we have the learning programs, or at least the people in charge of understanding what are the specific needs that are relevant for specific business units. And then what is happening across business units with this group of job families, right, or crafts. So I think with those three angles, we cover a lot and very specific, very niche needs that I think sometimes you may think, okay, we're putting a program that is for the masses and it's so big that it's so important, right? But I think in tech, that's the difference, right? If you have a group of 200 machine learning scientists, these are your core people, right, that you need to support, especially now. So I think the fact that it's maybe a lower volume that centralized audiences, it doesn't do get the support that they require, right? So I think that's something quite unique for tech that everybody really has their voice heard, and we are really listening everywhere to try to just do our best to fulfill the learning needs that they flag with us, right?
Yeah, and that's I remember when you and I talked. A lot of L&D is sort of like putting up decentralized programs, right? Like, for example, manager training. But you also talked, you mentioned peer-to-peer learning, or like where it's not about you putting the program, but it's you enabling others to share themselves, right? Like, and I believe you use some of that in the was it engineering management that, and I've also done an engineering management program at Twitter, so that's why we share that interest. So how's that different? How's like a EM engineering manager training different than sort of like your run-of-the-mill, you know, HR manager training?
Yeah, so I think they borrow everything they consider relevant as part of our centralized team. But then on top, they run their own programs, for example, how to work or increase your collaboration with product, right? Which is something very unique for them. So in most cases, via the craft, they organize these workshops and they just knock on my door. We make it easier for them, and they are there facilitating these sessions, right? For example. But another example is, I mean, part of upskilling tech groups is really allowing them to be aware of what is going on out there, right? So we have processes in place to allow them to attend conferences, for example, right? And to share back the knowledge. So some years ago, we sent a couple of engineers to one of the leading conferences in Europe. And they came back saying, yeah, it was nice, but I think if we put together something internally, it's much more efficient for us and way better, right? Because we have a lot of resources already in this central pillar. I think it's just more around getting to know each other, building up on that peer-to-peer learning, and just sharing examples that are more relevant, right? So I was like, all right, this is interesting. Let's see, what do we want to achieve, right? What are our objectives? I mean, who's our audience? And we built a little bit of a steer core group. And then we basically created an internal conference for engineering managers at booking.com. We first started with those based in Amsterdam, where most of our biggest population is employed, and also because we have a beautiful auditorium in our beautiful campus, right? So we have the space, and we have the group of people doing this, right? And it all starts with a pilot. Then we improve it, we take the feedback, and then the next session is way better, right? Again, we do that, and it's very iterative, mirroring the practices they do in their day-to-day job, right? So it is really inspiring to work with them because you see the feedback and you see like, yes, we deliver a product that is really being hitting the nail, solving the need that this group of people identified, and that is well received, right? All done internally. So it is just really a testament of how even management and directors are allowing their senior engineering managers to team up with me and with the team to offer something for a greater population, right? And for a bigger goal. So stuff like this is something that really makes my job really unique in that way, right? Of working with tech, how fast we can just bring something and really understanding, making sure that we have like a diverse panel of ideas and we welcome everyone's input. We deliver something that truly resonates. So it's been a pleasure, this specific piece of work, right? And we have so many other examples, but this is, I think, the most recent one.
What strike me interesting is that centralized versus decentralized, right? Like it's often centralized for L&D, where you're talking at people versus just holding the space and having them, like letting 1,000 flowers bloom essentially, and just holding the space and helping others share themselves. So that really resonated. So wonderful how like you have both, and for the right, you use the different tools for the different purpose. So that's very cool. I'm curious. So you've done some really interesting stuff so far. What's on the horizon? What are you excited about in terms of the work that you're doing? Or yeah.
Yeah, I think right now AI plays a big role, right? And I think these specific crafts, they're obviously playing. We have our own partnerships, right, that are really focused to increasing the experience for our customers. And I think it's really exciting to watch this space and the partnerships we have, just to see how our business evolves, right? How we're going to make that experience in our app or in your laptop way better than what it is, right? Really leveraging the connected experience, what we call. But I think staying curious, I think really leveraging and saying, reminding people what the true learning journey is, right? That sometimes it feels uncomfortable, right? That sometimes you need to prioritize specific time to make sure you play around with some AI tools, right? That you fail, that you recognize your mistakes, that you share, right? All of these very learning intensive moments, I think, is something that I am really happy to have that opportunity to remind people, right? Like it is okay to feel overwhelmed, right? We're all learning. It doesn't matter if you're an SVP. This is a new tool, right? This is all new for us. And I think part of the key role I have here is to allowing them to learn, right? If they come across a conference or a paper that they want to have access to, telling us the specifics about how this specific module or this security conference is going to open your eyes to much more ways we could improve our own services. I think it's something that I am truly happy to be able to enable that, right? So that's really something that is very new, very curious, and I think it's very revolutionizing a lot of other fields as well, right? We're not the only ones, but it's very interesting in that it's something very exciting as well. These new possibilities that are
Yeah,
there.
man. Yeah, everyone's talking about AI, and it's like the answer you always get. And you also teach AI internally, right? So you're supporting the AI ML teams. So there's one aspect. But I'm curious, how do you see AI playing out in L&D, right? Like what is it gonna be? helping with content creation, curation, discovery, enabling others to like coaching. Like what are some of the things that you're seeing or even playing with or experimenting with, if anything, with respect to AI?
Yeah, so I would say we have two types of group of people playing with AI, right? I mean, one group is like AI tools that everyone has access to, and the others are the really specialized AI models, right? In-house models that we have. So I think I'm lucky to be part of both or seeing both, right? Internally within the L&D team, we're basically playing around with the tools. We're lucky to be piloting, right? And I think while let's say we are drinking our own champagne, right? We're testing everything we're putting out there for our colleagues. We're going through that ourselves. Sometimes we go through it ourselves first as a team to improve it or to highlight, hey, this could be better if we do this, right? Um, so we're basically playing around with a lot of the tools that we have and seeing how we could improve that product, linking it to, for example, the course catalog we have, or how to make that interaction connected to all the curated stuff that we have in house, right? So marrying those two words. But I think the key piece, what we're really trying to explore a bit more, is this is a very nice tool that will help us really track development when it is happening directly in the tools, right? Instead of having people to do other processes or ask them to go to different portals. I think we are trialing a lot of things, but the idea is to just in one provider of one of these tools that we have access to, make all of these united, right? So it's just making it easier for people to find whatever it is that you're looking, coaching or improving your presentation skills or really understanding specific AI tools for your role. For example, if you're an engineer or product, that you easily find that mirroring the practices or the prompts you would do for anything else in your work, right? So, so it doesn't have to be that different to what you're doing in your flow of your own work, right? That's why we're trying to make this experience as smooth as possible, but linking it right to all the great content that we have and all the great programs that we have in house. So I think that's where we are trying to, reach to other people that are more technical than us traditionally in L&D to help us really match and do that connection of like API integrations, all that technical work that takes place in the background to make sure that this works the way we want it, right?
Got it. Got it. So it's basically one-stop shop connecting various systems in one place, making it super easy for people to discover, making it in the flow of work, so they don't need to like it's there when they need it, and all that with the purpose of helping them be better at what they do, which is why you got into L&D originally to begin with, right?
Yes,
That's wonderful.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So looking at, so kind of like zooming out and looking at your, you've had a wonderful career. You've worked with some amazing organizations and done some really strategic sort of learning and development work. Looking back, what would be a piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
I think stay true to yourself, right? Like really don't be afraid to pause, reflect, to calibrate. Am I still enjoying this? Am I still finding this inspiring, right? Does this really give me the thrills, feels excited? And if not, then do a bit more self-reflection of, okay, what is it that I would like to, right? There to the sky's the limit, right? So I think if you just have some time to figure out what is it that you want, what would you call your ideal scenario, go for it and you'll be surprised that you're gonna get it, right? So I think doing maybe that journey a bit earlier would have been easier, right? Especially relocating to another country. I think I would have been nice to have that realization maybe 5 years earlier. But still, right? It led me to the path where I am now. But I think that staying true to yourself and really understanding what is driving you right in the latest episode of your life. So
I love that, staying true to yourself, and just kind of following your path. Well, you've been definitely inspiring to me. So thank you, Denisse. Super awesome to have you on the show. I appreciate you joining us.
No, thank you very much for the invitation, Marko. And it was nice, right? Excellent opportunity as well to get to know you and your audience.
Awesome. We'll chat soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Marko.
That's it for this episode of the Intelligence Amplifiers. If you like what you've heard, be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss out on the future episodes. And if you're interested in being a guest or have a question, check out the episode description for how to reach us. Also, don't forget to check out Plus Plus, the platform that makes collective intelligence at scale possible. Find out more at plusplus.co. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep amplifying.